Hello everyone and welcome to Science and Sorcery's Moment of Awesome. My name's Sam, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm delighted to be back to talk to another member of the tabletop role-playing community to talk about who they are, what they do, and why what they do is awesome. So, Gina, who are you and what do you do?
Hello, I'm Gina. I am on the internet as Oh Hey It's Gina Susanna. I'm a TTRPG performer, actor, voice actor, freelance writer. I guess you could say content creator, though I don't really like that term, so I don't use it very often.
And so how long have you been in this community, like content creating and making cool things?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty new to the space. I've been playing TRPGs since about 2019. But I've been in, I guess, this online TRPG space since, probably 2022. It's when I joined TikTok for the first time as a way to just like make new friends in the queer community, but also with people of shared interests. And in 2023, if my timeline is right, is when I first started. I did my first actual play. So I guess that would be the first time I kind of like really entered the community.
So really quite recently then, like that's like not a long time, is it?
No.
But you said started with TikTok as like video content creation. So that's a very different world from going into more recorded actual plays, I guess.
It absolutely is, which is why I don't really use the term content creator too much, because I was never really, even when I was making TikToks about TRPGs or D&D or other games and things like that, it was never really the kind of thing that I liked to do. And it was more so something that I felt like I needed to do in order to meet people and kind of, get into those spaces where other people were doing the things that I wanted to be doing. So when I started, I started my first AP in 2023, my first ever streamed game also. So it was the first time I'd ever played this game. It was a D&D campaign online. and I'd always been a theater kid, so I'd always done like acting and performing and things like that outside of this. But yeah, that was really my first foray into this. And then since that show, since Secrets of the Core, I've been doing more of like what I really love to do, which is just performing and doing these types of shows.
Yeah, so thinking about the like kind of more recent work that you have been doing, we'll talk a little bit more about that like shortly. D&D is a very kind of mechanics-led game, whereas some of the other games or stories that you've been telling recently that are not, they don't have, it's not that they don't have mechanics, but they're not quite as crunchy as, say, D&D would be. Do you have a preference between those?
I really don't like, well, that's not true. I don't dislike games that have strong mechanics. I prefer to play in games that are loose on the mechanics or have mechanics in place that allow for a lot of nuance, variability, storytelling, openness to them. Like, for example, for Godkiller, which is the show that I'm doing right now, Godkiller Balance, it's a Powered by the Apocalypse system, which was, as many people know, created by Connie Chang, the Godkiller series, the Godkiller system. And so Powered by the Apocalypse is pretty loose. A lot of even the mechanics allow you to dictate, or the GM to dictate with you what happens, versus something like D&D or like, Pathfinder or other games that are crunchier like that. It's pretty scripted in the sense of like, based on the game mechanics, this is what happens when you do this thing, or when you make this choice, when you have this role, this is the thing that happens. I really prefer being able to tell a story. Not that you can't do that in other crunchier game systems, but there's just more room. There's more room for it, which I prefer.
Yeah, there's definitely more sense of freedom, I guess, is what we're thinking. I absolutely 100% prefer that style of play as well. You mentioned Godkiller Balance. Tell us about that. What is that all about? You've mentioned the system a little bit, but
it's a 12-part audio-only podcast actual play series, Godkiller Balance, using the Godkiller system by Connie Chang. It's a sequel. Balance is a sequel to Blackwater D&D's award-winning Godkiller Oblivion, which came out last year. It's won and is nominated for, Oblivion has won and is nominated for multiple WebFest awards, and Balance, which is the season that I am in, is now in, we've released 2 episodes, well, let's see, the prologue and 2 episodes and an interlude. So I guess technically 4 episodes right now. It's how do I want to say this? It is the thing that I'm doing right now is the best thing I think I have ever done. I think it is the thing that I am most excited about, the show that I will not stop talking about, cannot stop talking about. It's just exceptional, and it's led by M. Carlson, who is the GM for the series. M is also one of the exceptional storytellers at Blackwater D&D. Fair storytelling is mind-boggling to me, and it is rooted in their homebrew campaign, their homebrew world that their current campaign is set in. The lore is so rich. It is just, I'm biased, but it's really good. So,
well, coming in as someone who has listened to episodes of it so far, I'm not fully up to date, but
that's okay. That they're long.
And there's so much content generally out there, like to try, like from all shows to try and take in.
Yeah.
But from what I have listened to, it is an incredibly emotional game and story with some real powerhouses of the role-playing worlds involved.
Yeah, the cast that we have for this show is, so it's myself and Yanis Wessels. We play the 2 Godkillers. So Godkiller is a duet RPG, but we've really kind of been mixing it up a little bit in terms of how we can approach it. So we're keeping it still really intimate. It's still a very small, intimate cast per episode. But we've been able to bring in some just exceptional storytellers and role players. We've had Christian Navarro, Tim Carlson, Anjali Bamani, Luis Carrazzo, Cody Heath, Christian Carlson. We've recorded episodes with Brennan Lee Mulligan, Matt Mercer, and we have one other who we have not yet announced, who is still our final secret special guest. The talent and the cast that we've been able to bring into this show is, I think, something that I never really thought I would be involved in. But this, I think it really speaks to how many people want to tell emotionally rich stories and how many people connect to those types of stories. I mean, Balance is really a exploration on grief and on hope and on anger and vengeance and loyalty and dedication and all of these emotions that I think have such a place in storytelling like this. And we don't always necessarily find ourselves with the space or the medium to be able to do that. And I feel so grateful that we're able to do that with this.
And you said about like more people wanting to tell these stories that surround like grief or like darker themes as well. It definitely seems to be something that's growing. Another one of the guests that I've had on to chat is mutual friend of ours, Rara from the Heart of the Dungeon, to talk about those kind of like sad snack style podcasts. And with more people doing that, I'd be really interested to know about the experience of doing Godkiller, about how you keep yourself emotionally safe and what the table safety is like there to make sure that everybody's kept safe.
That's a fantastic question, because I think that's one of the things that you need to be really aware of if you are wanting to tell stories like this is, starting out with a really strong session 0 with consistent, proactive, and responsive communication of what are we wanting to tell? What are our, lines and veils? What are our safety systems, our safety tools that are in place if things get really intense? Because sometimes you don't know what is going to be activating for you or what is going to be a line for you until you're there. And the possibility for bleed in storytelling like this can be really high if you don't have those tools in place, and also if you're not aware of it as you're going. So Em and I are both therapists in our day jobs, and I think that we have a lot of familiarity with grounding into and regulating out of deep emotion. we do a lot of grounding before session recordings. We do some afterward. We communicate with each other afterward. All of us do. It's really, really important. I think if you are going to dive deep in these types of stories, to practice self-care, to practice, I don't know if you want to call it like aftercare, but also just being aware of how you were feeling as a player, but also as a listener. If this is something that's going to be activating for you, or if, really diving into grief is not something that is going to feel safe for you at this time, then being aware of that. I mean, I would say that for any piece of medium that you engage in.
And like a lot of that, you mentioned session 0 and the kind of table safety, a lot of that must come down to that kind of production side of putting together this game. That must have been really tight in order to put this forward. Yeah, it's something that I think we really, in terms of the production of this, it's something that we really keep checking in with each other on, of how are you feeling as you're telling this story, taking breaks, because our sessions are often long. The time zone that I'm in versus the time zone that they're all in, and trying to coordinate all of that. Often I'm recording late. I know it's late for you right now. It's not late for me, but often when we record, it's kind of the flipped. So I'm recording super late at night, and emotionally, sometimes it's more intense for me just because I'm tired, right? I cry a lot. If you've listened to this show, you'll know that there's a lot of tears that come both from me, from other performers. There's a lot of emotion that runs into this. And that it's really important to be aware of that. Something that I have spoken to a number of other performers in the past about is that, especially if you come from a theatre background, that actual play, you tend to be with a character for a lot longer than you might be in other, like a stage play. You go through the same process all over. I don't know if that's something that you've experienced with like this character as well, that you're in that character for longer, and if that kind of deepens your feelings around what's going on in a scene or throughout a story.
That's a fantastic question. I would say that, I think I take the approach that I tend to take to role play, to character creation, may not be the same approach that other people tend to take. I tend to become pretty emotionally involved, pretty emotionally attached and connected to my characters, which is why I tend to cry a lot when I play, or if I tend to experience the emotion often, which is where it's important to be aware of bleed, right? Of allowing our own emotions to influence our performance and allowing ourselves to connect with the emotions of our character while still keeping that distance of being able to kind of snap out of it in any given moment. But I think, as with like a theater performance, or doing something that's not more long form interactive, I think the improv piece comes into play a lot, because if you're doing something that's scripted, you kind of know what's going to happen to the character. You know what the storyline is going to be. And even with something like this, even with APs, sometimes you kind of know the direction that it's taking, but you don't know what's going to be coming at you. You don't know necessarily how your character is going to respond to something until it happens. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about doing this kind of work, is that you get to go on that journey with your character. You get to experience what it is that they're experiencing as the story is progressing, and you get to tell that story with your character, not for them, but with them. I think that that's really special. And I think that that's what really, I think we're seeing a lot of in the expansion of AP, the expansion of like seeing TRPGs or this type of media becoming more mainstream. More people are actually seeing it as collaborative storytelling and less like people sitting around playing a game, which it is that, but it's so much more than that, I think.
You mentioned about improv and not knowing what's coming next. I know that in some of the other Godkiller games that have been out there, like Connie Chung's recent in-studio game, they had like a dramaturgy involved. Is that something that Blackwater has as part of your
we
game?
We do have a dramaturgy. So Tim Carlson is our dramaturge for that. Yeah.
And is that what's that experience like? Because it's completely out of the world that I've ever experienced. So I don't really.
It is out of the world for me as well. I M would be one who I think would be fantastic for you to speak with on that, because from the production side of it, M has been just an absolute powerhouse of putting all of this together. Of all of the work that Faye does is just, I'm very lucky that I get to experience it from this side of the table. I do the clips, so all of those teaser clips that you see, those I put those together, but everything else is M.
That's amazing. So what do you reckon then? Like, the last season was award winning.
Yes.
What about this
It's
one?
exceptional.
Do you think you'll run for this one?
I hope so. I don't know. I think it's probably a little too soon to tell, but I'm also wildly biased, so I'm gonna say yes. But who knows?
I mean, the response that I've seen from an outsider perspective seems to be that it's incredibly positive and that people are really enjoying it. So
that has been such a just heartwarming thing for me to see. Is something that I know I put a lot of my own emotion and heart into this character, but into this show. But to see other people respond to it in a way, in the way that they have, is so special to me. Of people saying like, this has been cathartic for me to move through grief by listening to someone else do it, or think about the people that I've lost in this way and hear somebody experience that kind of pain in a way that feels safer than me feeling like I have to experience it all over again. It's very special to me, and it no surprise, it makes me cry every time somebody sends me something like that. But it's been really amazing.
And before I kind of touch on, you've mentioned the community so far in terms of what people are thinking, but before moving on to that a little bit deeper, is if someone watching this was interested in being involved in a very kind of emotionally driven game in the future, what sort of advice would you as a performer give them?
I would say, I think the most important thing is finding a table that you trust, finding people that you play with that you trust to be able to hold those types of emotions with you, and also knowing what you want to get out of it. I think it's really important to remember that these types of games, approaching games in this way, is not therapy. It can be very therapeutic, but it's not therapy. You should never be expecting your table to be providing therapy for you. That's not fair to them as people who are suddenly watching this play out in front of them and not necessarily knowing what to do with it. But also, it's not fair to you as the person who is looking for someplace to put these deep emotions where it may not be the best place for it. So I think having a really strong support system, knowing what you want to get out of it in terms of what are the emotions I want to explore, being able to communicate that with your table, and then familiarizing yourself with the adequate forms of self-care that you can utilize after the fact, so that it is an experience. It's not something that you're carrying with you all the time. So when you are done recording, you're able to go and engage in some self-care. You're able to disconnect. You're able to go back to where you were before. You're not staying in that space all the time.
It's a thing that what you've said a couple of times now is like communication's key, and that's just like the biggest part of any table for any game you're playing, right?
Yeah.
So we talked about this game and the potential for award-winning, but you're already an award-winning performer, right? So what's your experience been like in the TTRPG community so far? Like, as you mentioned, it's not been like that long a time you've been in here, but what's it been like?
No, that winning a Crit Award for Best D&D Player, I'm still shocked that happened. I genuinely did not think that I was going to win, and I was ready to congratulate all of my friends who had been nominated alongside me, because I am very new to this space, but it has been just such a exceptional experience of getting to meet people who approach storytelling in a way that's similar to me, people who approach it in a way that's different from me, people who, I've learned so much from the people in this community, both in ways that I am grateful for the experience because it was positive, and in ways that I am grateful for the experience because it was not positive. It is such a rich space, and I feel very honored to just even be able to create with the people in it, the people that I've been able to meet and work alongside it's been mind-boggling to me.
And what does excite you the most about this community as well? I ask everybody this. It's nice to see what's going on in everyone's heads about the community right now.
I think I've really loved all of the new games that I've seen coming out, like the new indie games, the new approaches to these types of things, not just D&D, not just Pathfinder, but like duets, solo journaling games, right? Like things like the ones that come to mind are like 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, Deathmatch Island, Rom-Com Drama Bomb, Paint the Town Red, like things like that, like games that really, I think, play a lot with even like Mothership, right? Like the other types of games that are really rooted in, at least I think, emotional exploration, ability to really dial into our fears and our insecurities or our vulnerabilities. Games that allow for that, I think, are really showing the depths that people want to be able to take. Not that every game has to be that way, but that there is really a drive for that. I also really love seeing the prioritization of diversity, diverse tables, diverse stories. The Heart is a Dungeon does such a great job of prioritizing this. But really, I think that the thing that I am most excited about is just seeing the avenue that storytelling has been taking, how people are really recognizing the power in that. Like, I think that this sort of improvisational, collaborative storytelling is just so powerful, both for people who are playing it and for people who are watching it or listening to it. I think it really allows folks new avenues into themselves, and that is so transformative.
I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. And you mentioned Paint the Town Red, which is one of those games that is like it's like the second top from my list of games I need to play next. And like just the idea there of like you're playing as like sad gay vampires, but that can be played in so many different ways.
I just love that.
Because like you can explore just like what's it like to exist as just like a sad queer vampire and the trials and tribulations, or it could be about grief and about constant loss for living forever.
It could be about everything, right? I mean, all change is loss in some way, and there is such a beautiful avenue to take in that it's so versatile. You hear that and you think like, oh, well, I'm just sad gay vampire, like that sounds fun, but there's so much that you can do with that.
It's nice to see like a fresh take on that type of character, because I know it's been done a lot, but I'm really excited to see when that game comes out, the full ways that it's utilized and stories that are told. We're rapidly running out of time. We've got Godkiller Balance, but what comes next for you after that? Oh,
what a fantastically existential question. I don't know. I've really been loving voice acting. I've really been loving freelance writing. I have a few pending books that come out in 2025 that I've been working on with Paizo, with Pathfinder. One of which that I can announce. They announced it at Gen Con. It's the new Lost Omens Rival Academies source book, adventure book that comes out March 2025. There's a couple other things I can't talk about yet, but that's one of them. Godkiller Balance is being released over the course of this next probably. God, I don't even know how long it's going to be until it's all released. It's every other week that it gets released. We're still recording that, so we have a handful of episodes left to record there. And then I have, I have a couple other like pending projects and things that I'm hoping to be able to start doing. One of the things that is a little sad for me is that I don't get to really ever play in person with people, because so many people, that's one of the great things about the community, right, is that it allows this like accessibility to being able to collaborate and communicate and meet all of these amazing people, but they're not near me. They're all everywhere else, and I'm here. So everything I've been doing has been virtual, but I'm hopeful that hopefully soon, there's a few things potentially pending that will put me at an actual table, which would be really, really exciting for me.
That's very exciting. Very, very exciting. I only get to play in person once every couple of weeks, and it is just the best. So I'm jealous of you. Right.
I haven't gotten it yet, so there's nothing to be jealous of just yet. Hopefully soon.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Where can people find out more about you?
Oh, I'm in various places on the internet, all under the same name. Oh, hey, it's Gina. Mostly on Instagram and reluctantly still on Twitter. I'm trying to get into Threads more. I am still on TikTok. I'm just not really active on TikTok. But yeah, usually just any of those places you can probably find me.
And people can listen to Godkiller Balance at Blackwater
Yes, they can.
D&D. They go look
Yes.
for it there.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yep. And if you if you like what you see on any of those socials, there's a lot more of it being pumped out of podcast form. So
Amazing. Gina, thank you so much for coming and have a chat with me.
thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Folks at home, if you're watching along, like, go check out the links alongside this video. If you're watching on YouTube, in the card below. If you're on Twitch, there'll be links in chat. And go check out Godkiller Balance wherever you can find it on streaming platforms. And also go check out our wonderful guest, Gina. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and we'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.